So most people are getting poorer but don't know it, and the Fed is to blame for the wealth destruction. So if you had 100, so the average baby boomer, by the way, I looked this up, has about $100,000 in cash. Now they have more in stocks, right, and bonds, but the average baby boomer holds about $100,000 in cash. So since 2020, so I looked up that statistic. So they're holding cash, right? They're not buying Bitcoin. Only 8% of baby boomers buying Bitcoin, right? Not buying Bitcoin. Some of them have some gold, right? About 1%. But here's the thing. They think they're safe in cash. So if you had $100,000 in your savings over the past couple of years, right, you lost $39,781 in purchasing power. It still looks like $100,000 in your savings account, but you lost nearly $40,000 in purchasing power. And when people say to me, I didn't lose any money, they don't understand inflation. So you're staying in cash is just as bad is staying in anything else. Treasuries, right? Right? You're getting killed everywhere, every how, every way. And yet, repeat after me, there's no recession. So the Fed operations and Eclipse. Here's the Fed's chart, okay? Look at that. Wow, the Eclipse making a direct hit right onto the Mercury-Moon conjunction of the Federal Reserve operations chart. This is followed up by a lunar eclipse in November, hitting what? It's hitting right against the it's within striking distance of the Federal Reserve's natal sun. Right? So like the Fed is going to be in a major emergency, and the Fed's credibility is going to evaporate because first they said there was no inflation, if you remember. Then they told us not to worry about inflation, right, because it was transitory. Then when it became apparent there was not merely just transitory inflation, they told us not to worry because inflation is actually good for the economy. If you remember on CNN, I showed you a slide or two back a few months back how CNN was saying how inflation is good for the economy. Then when it became obvious that inflation was not good, then they told us not to worry because they had it under control. So this amount of extreme money printing that's creating all the inflation, right? All right. It means if your after tax wealth has not increased by 41%, meaning if you're not invested in instruments that have increased in value by 41%, you're not keeping up with the Fed's monetary debasement of the currency. You're losing ground. You're on the road to serfdom. The baby boomers, by and large, who are retiring now, are on the road to serfdom because they don't understand inflation. They don't look at these things. They don't look at the fact, what I just showed you here, right? I have millennials who don't understand it. I get it. I get the millennials. They still don't understand. They just get angry and pissed off because they're going to vote Democrat anyway, and they believe Biden's statement, there's no recession, because they don't understand inflation. But the baby boomers should know better, and they don't, most of them. All right. No, the ones that consult with me, they don't understand it. They do understand it after a depression defense reading when I show how much they really lost. So if you're not making 41% a year, you're getting destroyed. You're getting destroyed. And if you don't have time to make up, like the millennials have time to make up for it, but not the baby boomers, right? You're getting poorer. And the Fed is doing it. And the real issue with the Fed, right, is perfectly laid out in Marx's Communist Manifesto in the fifth plank. The fifth plank states, right, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital, an exclusive monetary policy, which is a perfect description of the Federal Reserve and other central banks. So in reality, the Fed is nothing more than a bureau of bureaucrats attempting to centrally plan the economy by tinkering with the money and the interest rates, right? This is the most important price in all of capitalism. So what we're seeing here is the Soviets' centrally planned economy. So we have to keep that in mind, that central banks and the power of the central banks are going, right? We're going to hit the central power of the central banks are going to be exposed with this eclipse. What they're really trying to do is move us more into a command economy, a Soviet state planning command economy. That's how they're trying to position us. If you look at all of these things, many of these things have been put into place. But here's the most important thing, right? Even if you don't want to believe that because you're not ready to believe it, even though the truth is in plain sight, is that every Fed rate hiking cycle has ended with default and bankruptcies of governments, banks, and investors. Every one. So when we look at that eclipse, we go, well, wow, all these planets in Scorpio, right? Mercury, Moon, Sun, all of them here getting hit by the solar partial eclipse, total lunar eclipse, while all of these other bigger developments are happening in the world. And then you look at the fact that the partial solar eclipse is making a direct hit on the Neptune of the S&P 500, right? So Neptune would be a sign of peak inflation transitioning into what? Deflation. So we're going to see gold bottom, and then gold, along with other assets like Bitcoin, begin to rise because we're going to see a deflationary set of events begin. Now, one of the things that people are saying, well, the stock market the past few days has been stabilizing a bit. And I said, I know that. That's these type of bear market rallies is very common with Mars square Neptune. So that Mars square Neptune is going to be around all the way between now and April, late March, early April of this year. And when you have Mars square Neptune, you generally see the stock market go down and then it starts going up. Everyone says, we're fine, right? We're fine. We're out of it. We're coming out of it. Prices are stabilizing because it has what? When you compare it to the S&P 500 index, it pushes the price artificially up, right? So this is Mars Neptune. These are basically creating bear market rallies. They're bear market rallies. They're sucker rallies. And you know for sure, right? When you see Jim Cramer saying, I still believe we've seen the lows of this tough market. And this is where we're at right now, right? We are following the 2008, 2009 market perfectly. So we're seeing this bear market rallies. So people get suckered in. Now, what will happen and what can we expect over the next 24 days? So this is what we can expect leading into this eclipses. It's going to get more intense. Macroeconomic catalysts that shift the market narrative, unexpected announcements and developments and new revelations that dramatically shift investor sentiment, increasing moral hazard of highly leveraged margin trading, bear market rallies, massive margin liquidations leading to a sudden sell-off or flash crash. We can expect unexpected reversals of fortune, power, and prosperity. We saw that happen with England. We saw that happen with the UK Prime Minister. We saw that with the Bank of Japan. We're going to see that with the ECB real soon. We're going to see that happen with a number of things. We're going to see that happen with the Democratic Party, and you'll see in the next few slides. Markets are swept up in new developments, invoking existential crises in markets, corporations, sovereign wealth funds, and governments that trigger forced liquidations, bankruptcy, contractions, corrections, and central bank intervention. Central bank intervention is happening already now, secretly, hidden in plain sight, right? To Switzerland to prevent Credit Suisse from going under. But then what happens with Deutsche Bank or with the French banks, right? What's going to happen? They're going to inject trillions, billions into them too. The Bank of England's going to go under. What are they going to do with that, right? A sharp, dramatic change of status and prestige where you go from hero to zero. Right? You go from prime minister to a political heretic or a political pariah, right? You become a hero to a pariah. Correlation with a radical reframing of valuation and unquestioned presumptions of investment classes or sectors, major wake-up call events that shake up the market out of its cognitive dissonance of the true reality of the
To watch the
situation.
full presentation and more like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join the Global Transformation Astrology membership. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com. Become a GTA member today.